The first time Ava Monroe predicted Dante Moretti's death, she did it in front of 1,200 people under a chandelier, worth more than her childhood home. The casino was called the Obsidian Crown, and it rose from the Las Vegas Strip like a palace built for sinners. Black marble floors reflected rivers of gold light. Crystal towers hung from the ceiling. Private security moved through the crowd like shadows in tailored suits. Every table was full. Every balcony was lined with billionaires, celebrities, politicians, and men who smiled too calmly to be innocent. Ava stood at the center of the stage in a silver dress that caught the light like liquid moonlight. Her dark hair was pinned away from her face, her hand steady, her heartbeat controlled. She had performed for drunk millionaires, skeptical executives, and men who thought power made them impossible to impress. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the air felt like it was holding its breath. Her final illusion was supposed to be simple. A sealed glass box, a deck of cards, a prediction locked inside a black envelope chosen by a random guest. Nothing dangerous, nothing political, nothing that should have made the most feared man in Las Vegas stop breathing. Ava smiled for the cameras as a man from the front row stepped onto the stage. She did not know his name, but she knew the type. Expensive watch, controlled posture, a smile that never reached his eyes. He selected a card, signed it, and slid it into a small velvet case. The crowd watched with polished amusement. Ava turned toward the giant screen behind her. "Tonight," she said, her voice smooth and confident, "we are going to prove that some choices are made before we ever touch the cards." Soft laughter moved through the room. Then the lights dimmed. The screen flickered, and the illusion began to go wrong. Not technically, not visibly, but Ava felt it immediately, like a cold hand pressing between her shoulder blades. The sequence unfolding behind her was not the one she had rehearsed. The stage lights shifted from gold to red. The music dropped into a low, pulsing rhythm she had never approved. On the screen, a digital clock appeared. 11, 47, PM. The crowd applauded, thinking it was part of the act. Ava kept smiling, but her fingers tightened around the velvet case. The screen changed again. A black limousine arriving beneath the casino's private entrance. A man stepping out. A bulletproof door opening. A flash of silver near the east balcony. 3 shots. A chandelier falling. A body on black marble. The audience went silent for half a second. Then they erupted. They thought it was brilliant. They thought it was theater. They thought she had staged an assassination inside the most expensive casino opening in Las Vegas history. Ava turned slowly toward the VIP balcony and saw him, Dante Moretti. Even among the powerful, he did not need to announce himself. The room bent around him without trying. He stood behind the golden rail, dressed in a black tuxedo, one hand resting casually against the balcony edge. His hair was dark, his face unreadable, his eyes fixed on Ava with a stillness that made the applause feel far away. He was not clapping. No one near him was moving. Then the prediction envelope in Ava's hand began to burn. A thin ribbon of smoke curled between her fingers. The crowd gasped. Ava dropped it onto the glass table, heart kicking hard against her ribs. The envelope split open from the heat. Inside was a white card. On it, written in black ink, were 6 words. Dante Moretti dies at midnight tonight. The applause died. All at once, Ava looked up. Dante Moretti was already walking toward the stage. No rush, no panic, no visible fear, just a terrifying calm. His men moved with him, cutting through the crowd. Guests backed away before anyone told them to. The stage manager whispered frantically into a headset. Ava heard nothing clearly except the sound of Dante's footsteps crossing the marble floor. He stopped at the base of the stage and looked up at her. For one impossible second, Ava could not breathe. His eyes were not angry. They were worse. They were interested. "Who gave you that?" he asked. His voice was quiet, but somehow the entire theater heard it. Ava swallowed. "It's part of my act." "No," he said. "It isn't." The way he said it made her blood turn cold. 2 security guards reached the stage stairs, but Dante did not look at them. One of his men did, and the guards froze like their bodies had forgotten how to move. Ava forced herself to stand taller. "I don't know what you think happened," she said. "But I didn't write that." Dante climbed the steps, slowly. Every camera in the room turned toward him. Ava stepped back before she could stop herself. His gaze dropped to the burned envelope, then to her hands. "You're shaking," he said. "I'm standing in front of a man who looks like he wants to kill me." "If I wanted to kill you," Dante said, "you wouldn't still be standing." The words were not loud. They did not need to be. Ava's pulse thundered in her ears. Before she could answer, Dante turned his head slightly toward a man in a charcoal suit near the first row. "Lock every exit," he said. Panic moved through the audience like a spark hitting gasoline. People began to shout. Chairs scraped. Someone screamed from the balcony. Dante lifted one hand, and the room went strangely still again. Then his eyes returned to Ava. "Come with me." "No." A faint flicker crossed his face. Not amusement, not surprise, something sharper. "No?" he repeated. Ava's fear burned into anger. "You don't get to drag me off stage because your name appeared in a magic trick." Dante took one step closer. The space between them shrank into something dangerous. "You just announced my assassination in front of 1,200 witnesses," he said. "Either you are part of it, or someone made you part of it." "I'm not part of anything." "Then prove it by staying alive long enough to explain." The house lights suddenly flashed. Once, twice. Then every screen in the casino went black. Ava heard a crack through the sound system. Then a distorted voice filled the theater. "Midnight comes for kings." Dante's expression changed. Not much, but enough. The cold control in his face hardened into something lethal. He looked toward the ceiling. Ava followed his gaze. High above them, inside the crystal chandelier, a red light blinked. Then another. Then another. Dante moved before anyone else understood. He grabbed Ava by the waist and pulled her against him as the first explosion tore through the balcony. The sound was enormous. Glass burst outward. Gold railings twisted. People screamed. The force threw Ava into Dante's chest, his arm locking around her like iron. Heat rolled over the stage. Smoke swallowed the lights. For a moment, the world became fire and noise. Dante did not fall. He turned his body over hers, shielding her from the raining glass. Ava felt fragments strike his back. She heard him breathe once, hard and controlled near her ear. "Stay down," he ordered. She could not see, could barely hear, but she felt his hand on the back of her head, pressing her against his shoulder as debris shattered around them. Another explosion thundered from somewhere beyond the theater. The casino alarms began screaming. Ava coughed, eyes burning. Dante pulled back, just enough to look at her face. "Are you hit?" She blinked through smoke. "I don't think so." His gaze moved over her with terrifying focus, checking her forehead, her neck, her arms. Then his jaw tightened. Ava followed his eyes and saw blood on his white shirt. Not hers, his. A long shard of glass had cut through the back of his shoulder. "You're bleeding," she whispered. Dante looked almost annoyed by the information. "It can wait." He stood, pulling her up with him. The theater had become chaos. Guests were running toward locked exits. His men were moving through smoke, weapons drawn. Sprinklers burst overhead, turning ash into black rain. Ava stared at the burning balcony. "That was real," she breathed. Dante's hand closed around her wrist. "Yes." Her stomach dropped. "I predicted that." "No," he said. dragging her toward the side stairs. "Someone used you to deliver it." As they reached the backstage corridor, a man in a black uniform stepped from the shadows and raised a gun. Ava saw the weapon before she saw his face. Dante pulled her behind him. The gunshot cracked through the corridor. Dante fired once. The man dropped. Ava froze, her whole body locked around the horror of it. Dante did not even look shaken. He only turned his head slightly. "Move." She stared at the dead man on the floor. "I can't." Dante stepped close, blocking her view with his body. His voice lowered. "You can fall apart later. Right now, breathe and walk." Ava looked up at him, furious and terrified, and unable to understand why those words steadied her. He was bleeding. Armed men were running through his casino. Her illusion had become a murder prophecy. And somehow, Dante Moretti was the calmest thing in the fire. They moved through a narrow service hallway, lined with velvet curtains and equipment cases. The lights flickered overhead. Ava heard screams from the main casino floor. Slot machines rang wildly in the distance, absurd and cheerful beneath the alarms. Dante spoke into a small earpiece. "Evacuate the West Wing. Shut down the elevators. No one enters the private level. A pause." Then his expression darkened. "Then blow it." Ava turned sharply. "Blow what?" He ignored her. She yanked against his grip. "What are you blowing?" Dante looked at her. "My casino." For a second, she thought she had misheard him. "You're insane. I'm preventing a massacre. There are people inside." "Not for long." His calmness frightened her more than the explosions. They reached a steel door, guarded by two of his men. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with a scar across his eyebrow, looked at Ava with open suspicion. "She's the magician?" he asked. Dante's eyes cut to him. The man immediately lowered his gaze. "Yes, boss." That was the moment Ava understood something she had only heard in rumors. People did not obey Dante Moretti because he shouted. They obeyed because they feared what silence meant. The steel door opened into a private corridor that looked nothing like the rest of the casino. No gold, no velvet, no chandeliers, just black walls, low lighting, and security cameras hidden behind smoked glass. Dante pushed Ava inside and locked the door behind them. She backed away from him. "Who are you really?" she demanded. He gave her a cold look. "That question is usually my line. My trick was supposed to reveal a signed card. That's it. I didn't plan any of this. Who changed the sequence?" "I don't know." "Who had access to your props?" "My assistant. Stage crew. Casino production. Half your security team, probably." His eyes sharpened. Ava realized too late what she had said. Dante stepped closer. "My security team. I didn't mean—" "Yes," he said softly. "You did." He reached inside his jacket and took out her burned prediction card, somehow collected from the stage during the chaos. He held it between two fingers. Where did this handwriting come from? Ava stared at it. Her breath caught. The black ink, the narrow slant, the sharp curve of the D. For a moment, she was no longer in a burning casino. She was 12 years old, sitting at a kitchen table while her adoptive father wrote strange symbols in the margins of an old notebook and told her never to copy them where strangers could see. Her mouth went dry. Dante saw the change immediately. "You recognize it?" "No." He moved closer. "Ava." The way he said her name was quiet, but it felt like a hand closing around a secret. She hated that he knew it already. "I said no. You're lying." She lifted her chin. "And you're bleeding all over your expensive floor." For the first time, something almost like amusement touched his eyes. Almost. Then, another explosion shook the corridor. The lights died. Emergency red lights flickered on. Dante turned toward the wall monitors. Every screen came alive at once, showing the casino from dozens of angles. The evacuation was underway. Guests streamed through emergency exits. Black SUVs surrounded the building. Smoke poured from the roof. On one screen, the main gaming floor glittered under firelight. On another, armed men in casino uniforms moved toward the private elevators. Dante watched them with a predator's stillness. Then, the largest monitor changed. A man appeared on screen. He was older, silver-haired, dressed in a white dinner jacket untouched by chaos. He stood somewhere inside the casino, surrounded by fire and smiling as if he had been waiting years for this moment. Dante went completely still. Ava felt the temperature of the room change. The man on the screen spoke directly into the camera. "Dante Moretti," he said. "Still alive?" How disappointing. Dante's face revealed nothing, but the muscle in his jaw shifted once. The man smiled wider. "And Ava Monroe, the little magician. Your father had a flair for drama, too." Ava's heart stopped. Her father. Dante looked at her slowly. The man on screen continued. "Did he ever tell you what he really was? Or did he let you believe bedtime stories and card tricks could hide blood?" Ava could not move. Her father had been dead for 6 years. At least, that was what she had been told. The man leaned closer to the camera. Midnight was only the beginning. Then the screen went black. Silence filled the room. Ava heard herself breathing. Dante turned toward her. Very slowly. "Your father," he said. "What was his name?" Ava's throat tightened. "Samuel Monroe." Dante's eyes darkened. Not with confusion, with recognition. Ava felt the floor shift beneath her. "You knew him," she whispered. Dante did not answer. That silence was worse than any confession. She stepped back. "What was he?" Dante looked at the monitors again, then at the locked door, then at her. Outside, gunfire erupted somewhere in the casino. His men shouted through the comms. Ava's voice cracked. "Tell me." Dante reached for her wrist again, but this time she pulled away. "No. Tell me what he was." His expression remained controlled, but something colder moved beneath it. "He was the only man who ever failed to kill me." Ava stared at him. The words entered her slowly, one by one, each more impossible than the last. "My father was a schoolteacher." "No," Dante said. "He was a professional assassin." Ava shook her head. "That's not true. He was sent to put a bullet in my head when I was 17. No, he didn't. Stop. He disappeared instead. Stop talking." "And 6 years later," Dante said, his voice lowering, "he adopted you." The room tilted. Ava grabbed the edge of a black table to keep herself standing. Every memory of Samuel Monroe seemed to fracture at once. His gentle voice, his worn card deck, the locked drawer in his study, the notebook she had found after his funeral, the strange rules. Never perform the black envelope trick for private clients. Never trust men who ask about midnight. Never go to Las Vegas if a Moretti owns the building. She had broken all of them. Dante watched her with an intensity that felt almost invasive. "You didn't know," he said. It was not a question. Ava looked at him through burning eyes. "I knew my father." "No," Dante said. "You knew the man he became." Pain cut through her anger. Before she could speak, the steel door at the end of the corridor exploded inward. Dante moved instantly. He shoved Ava behind the table and drew his gun. Men stormed through smoke. The corridor filled with gunfire. Ava dropped to the floor, covering her ears as bullets tore through glass and metal. Dante stood between her and the doorway like something carved from violence. He fired with terrifying precision, each shot controlled, each movement deliberate. One of his men fell near the wall. Another dragged him back. The scarred man shouted, "Boss, east exit is compromised." Dante did not look away from the attackers. "Then we go through the vault. The vault is under the blast zone." "Good," Dante said. "They won't expect me to take her there." Ava stared at him. "Take her, not escape." Not survive. Take her. As if the entire burning casino had already become secondary to whether she got out alive. The gunfire paused. Dante turned and crossed to her. She flinched when he reached down. His hand stopped in the air. For one brief second, he did not touch her. His face remained unreadable, but his restraint hit harder than force would have. Then he extended his hand, palm open. "You can hate me after we leave," he said. "But if you stay here, you die." Ava looked at his hand. There was blood on his cuff. His blood. Maybe someone else's, too. Everything in her screamed not to trust him. But outside the room, men were trying to kill her because of secrets her father had buried inside magic tricks. And Dante Moretti, feared by every criminal in Nevada, was the only person standing between her and the fire. She took his hand. His fingers closed around hers. Warm, firm, possessive. Not gentle, exactly, but careful. Dante pulled her to her feet and led her through a hidden panel behind the monitor wall. A narrow stairwell spiraled downward into darkness. Emergency lights flickered along concrete walls. The further they descended, the more the sound of chaos above them turned into a distant roar. Ava's heels slipped on the steps. Dante caught her before she fell, one hand at her waist, his body suddenly too close in the narrow space. She looked up. His face was inches from hers. For one suspended breath, neither of them moved. Smoke clung to his hair. Blood marked the side of his neck. His eyes moved over her face with a focus so intense it felt like danger of a different kind. Then he released her, abruptly. "Keep walking." Ava swallowed and turned away before he could see how badly her hands were shaking. They reached the bottom of the stairwell and entered a corridor built beneath the casino. It was colder there, lined with steel doors and silent cameras. Ava realized the Obsidian Crown was not just a casino. It was a fortress. "What is this place?" she asked. "A place that was never supposed to need saving." They moved past a door marked Private Holding, then another marked Records. At the end of the corridor stood a vault door taller than a limousine. Dante placed his palm against the scanner. The machine flashed red. Access denied. The scarred man behind them cursed. Dante tried again. "Well." Ava looked at the scanner, then at Dante's hand. Blood covered his palm. "The sensor can't read through blood," she said. Dante glanced at her. Then, without ceremony, he wiped his palm across his black jacket and tried again. Green. The vault opened with a deep metallic groan. Inside was not money, not gold, not jewels. It was a room full of files, thousands of them. Old photographs, sealed boxes, drives locked in glass cases, maps of cities. Names Ava recognized from news headlines and names no ordinary person should ever know. In the center of the room sat a black notebook under a glass cover. Ava stopped breathing. She knew that notebook, not the exact one, but the style, the worn leather, the red thread binding. The symbol burned into the corner. Her father's symbol. Dante saw her staring. "That belonged to Samuel," he said. Ava stepped toward it. "How do you have this?" Dante's voice turned quieter. "He left it for me." The words hit her like a slap. "My father left you something?" "Yes." "Why?" Dante's eyes held hers. "Because he knew one day someone would use you to finish what he refused to do." Ava's chest tightened. The ceiling trembled above them. Dust fell from the vault lights. The scarred man spoke urgently from the doorway. "Boss, charges are set. We have 3 minutes before the West Tower comes down." Ava turned sharply. "You really are destroying it." Dante looked at her. "Yes, this place cost $1 billion. Less than your life." The sentence landed between them with devastating silence. Ava stared at him, unable to answer. He looked away first, as if the words had revealed more than he intended. Then the vault monitors lit up. A countdown appeared across every screen. 0:03 0:02:59 0:02:58. Dante grabbed the black notebook from beneath the glass, breaking the case with the butt of his gun. Ava flinched. "You can't just—" "It's yours," he said, shoving it into her hands. "And it's why they came." The leather felt cold against her fingers. Her father's symbol burned against her palm like a ghost. Then the vault speakers crackled. The silver-haired man's voice returned. "Leaving so soon, Dante?" Dante froze. The vault door began to close. The scarred man shouted and lunged toward the controls, but the panel sparked violently. The door sealed. Ava, Dante, and the notebook were locked inside. The countdown kept falling. 0:02:31 0:02:30. Ava turned toward Dante, panic rising. "You said this was the way out." "It was." The silver-haired man laughed through the speaker. "No, Dante. It was the coffin." Ava looked at the countdown, then at Dante. For the first time since she had met him, she saw something flicker beneath his control. Not fear for himself. Fear when he looked at her. And that frightened her more than the bomb. The countdown reached 2 minutes. Dante stepped toward the sealed vault door, touched the steel once, then turned back to Ava. His voice was low. "Listen to me carefully." Ava clutched the notebook against her chest. "No, Ava, no. Don't use that voice like you're about to sacrifice yourself." His eyes locked onto hers. "If I tell you to run, you run. There's nowhere to run. There will be." "How?" Dante looked up at the ceiling, then back at her, and for the first time, his calm became something darker, something ruthless. "I'm going to bring the casino down on top of us." Ava's blood went cold. "What?" He stepped closer, his eyes burning through the red emergency light. "And when the floor breaks, you hold on to me." Above them, the world roared. The countdown hit 1 minute, and Dante Moretti wrapped one arm around Ava Monroe like he had already decided the entire city could burn before he let her die. The final 60 seconds felt strangely quiet, not because the explosions had stopped, because every sound seemed to exist behind a wall of slow-moving time. The countdown above the vault door flashed crimson. 0:0:59. Dust drifted from the ceiling like gray snow. Ava clutched the black notebook against her chest, her knuckles white. Across from her, Dante Moretti had already stopped looking at the timer. He was studying the room. Every wall, every vent, every support beam, every possible way to keep her alive. He reached into his jacket and removed a compact flashlight. Instead of pointing it at the floor, he aimed it toward the ceiling. A faint grid appeared across the concrete. Hidden reinforcement beams, old emergency shafts. His eyes narrowed. "They rebuilt this vault 15 years ago," he muttered. "You think there's another exit?" "I think someone wanted me to believe there wasn't." Another violent tremor shook the room. The steel shelves rattled. Photographs scattered across the floor. One landed near Ava's feet. She glanced down instinctively. The picture showed a much younger Dante, no older than 17. His face was thinner. There was dried blood beneath one eye. Standing beside him was a man with dark hair and kind eyes. Ava Monroe, her father. Ava froze. The photo slipped from her trembling fingers. Dante noticed immediately. He walked over, picked it up, and looked at it for a long moment. "He hated cameras," Dante said quietly. "You knew him." "I owed him my life." Ava stared. "You said he tried to kill you." "He was paid to." "And?" Dante's voice became almost distant. He couldn't. Silence filled the vault. Ava searched his expression. For the first time since they met, the feared Mafia Boss looked less like a king and more like a man carrying the weight of memories he'd buried long ago. "He found me in an abandoned church outside Palermo," Dante finally said. "I was 17. My father lived in Italy. He lived wherever contracts took him. Ava's chest tightened. No, he was the best assassin money could buy. The words hurt because they sounded believable. Samuel Monroe had always disappeared for weeks during Ava's childhood. Business trips, security consulting, government contracts. There had always been an explanation. Now every explanation felt like another lie. The countdown flashed. 0小时0分41秒. Dante crouched beside a reinforced wall panel. There, he slid his fingers beneath a thin crack hidden behind a storage cabinet. Metal shifted. A concealed maintenance hatch slowly revealed itself. A narrow shaft disappeared into darkness. Ava almost laughed from relief. It opens? It opens. So we can leave. Dante didn't answer. Instead, he looked up the shaft. It's barely wide enough for one person. Her relief vanished. No. You go first. No. Ava. I'm not leaving you. You don't have a choice. I do. You don't understand. No. She snapped. You don't understand. The words echoed harder than either of them expected. You keep deciding everything. You keep dragging me somewhere. You tell me my father was an assassin. You tell me my life is a lie. And now you're telling me to climb into some hole while you stay here waiting to die? She stepped closer. I am done letting you decide. For several seconds, neither moved. Dante simply looked at her. Most people lowered their eyes under his gaze. Ava refused. Something shifted inside him. Not anger, respect. Tiny, almost invisible, but real. Another explosion thundered above them. Concrete cracked. The ceiling groaned. The countdown reached 30 seconds. Dante exhaled slowly. Fine. Ava blinked. What? We both leave. She almost smiled. Almost. Then the emergency lights died. Complete darkness swallowed the vault. Only the timer remained. Red numbers floating in blackness. 0小时0分28秒. Dante reached instinctively for Ava. His hand found hers before either of them spoke. Varm. Steady. His grip tightened only enough to guide her. Nothing more. No unnecessary touch. No hesitation. Just certainty. I've got you. It was the first, reassuring thing he had said all night. They entered the maintenance shaft together. It was barely shoulder width. Cold steel scraped against their clothes. The notebook stayed pressed between Ava and her chest. Behind them, the vault door exploded inward. The blast waves slammed through the chamber. Flames chased them into the tunnel. Dante wrapped one arm around Ava's back, shielding her from flying debris. Metal fragments struck his shoulders. One sliced across his forearm. He didn't slow down. The shaft angled upward, barely illuminated by emergency strips. Halfway through, the tunnel suddenly shook. A deafening crack echoed overhead. The floor beneath them shifted violently. Ava lost her footing. She screamed as the narrow platform collapsed beneath her. Without thinking, Dante caught her wrist. Her body swung over a black maintenance pit, disappearing several stories below. The notebook slipped from her fingers. No. It bounced once against the steel ladder, then disappeared into darkness. Ava stared in horror. My father's notebook. Dante looked down, only briefly, then back into her eyes. Forget it. I can't. You can. It has every answer. And you're worth more than answers. He pulled with astonishing strength, muscles tightening beneath his torn tuxedo. Slowly, painfully, he lifted her back onto solid ground. The moment she reached him, the entire lower section of the tunnel collapsed into the darkness. Had he been 1 second slower, she would have died. Ava leaned against the wall, unable to breathe. Dante's breathing had become noticeably heavier. Blood ran steadily from the cuts across his back. You need a hospital. I need an exit. You've lost too much blood. I've survived worse. You always answer like that? It saves time. Despite everything, she almost laughed. He noticed. The smallest corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. just enough to remind her there was still a human being beneath the legend. They continued climbing. Finally, a steel hatch appeared above them. Dante shoved upward. It refused. He pushed harder. Nothing. It's blocked, Ava whispered. Dante stepped back, looked around, then noticed a small hydraulic release valve hidden beside the frame. Help me. Together they forced the wheel to turn. It resisted. Rust screamed through the mechanism. Finally, the hatch burst open. Fresh night air rushed inside. Ava climbed out first. Cold desert wind hit her face. They emerged behind an abandoned warehouse, nearly half a mile from the casino. For a brief moment, everything seemed still. Then, the sky exploded. The obsidian crown collapsed in spectacular fashion. The central tower folded inward. Glass erupted like a glittering storm. Fire climbed hundreds of feet into the Nevada night. The shockwave reached them seconds later. Hot wind swept across the empty lot. Ava watched in stunned silence. $1 billion empire. Gone. Destroyed by the man who built it. She turned toward Dante. You really did it. He never looked at the burning skyline. It was already lost. No, you chose this. I chose you. The sentence came so naturally, so quietly, that Dante himself seemed surprised he'd said it aloud. Silence settled between them. Ava searched his face. He looked away first. Almost immediately, headlights pierced the darkness. 3 black SUVs sped toward the warehouse. Doors flew open. Armed men surrounded the area, weapons raised. Ava instinctively stepped backward. Dante moved in front of her without hesitation. The men froze the instant they recognized him. The scarred lieutenant hurried forward. Boss. He stopped abruptly after seeing Dante covered in blood. His face lost all color. We thought. I know. The casino. It's gone. The lieutenant swallowed. We've secured 3 safe houses. Dante shook his head. No. The enemy knows every one of them. He glanced toward Ava. They were waiting inside my fortress. They'll expect every move I make. The lieutenant's expression darkened. You have a traitor. I've had one for years. Ava listened quietly. Then something occurred to her. The notebook. She looked toward the burning casino. It fell. Dante nodded once. I know. It can't stay there. It won't. You don't understand. My father left it for a reason. Dante looked into the flames. I understand better than anyone. Before Ava could ask what he meant, one of the guards shouted, Movement. Everyone spun. Across the empty street, a lone figure stood beneath a flickering billboard. An elderly man, white dinner jacket, hands calmly folded behind his back. The same silver-haired man from the security monitors, Viktor Sokolov, even from hundreds of feet away. He smiled directly at Ava, then slowly lifted something into the air. A black leather notebook. Samuel Monroe's notebook. He had it. Victor tilted his head politely, as if inviting them to come and take it. Then he disappeared into the darkness, just as police sirens echoed across the strip. Ava's heart sank. The notebook, and every secret her father had left behind, was now in the hands of the man trying to destroy them both. The sirens grew louder with every passing second. Blue and red lights reflected across the smoke drifting over the Las Vegas Strip, turning the night into a surreal blur of fire and flashing color. No one spoke. Everyone watched the empty street where Viktor Sokolov had disappeared with Samuel Monroe's notebook. Ava finally found her voice. We have to go after him. Dante didn't move. We won't catch him. He has my father's notebook. He wanted us to see it. She turned sharply toward him. So we're just letting him walk away? No. His voice remained calm. We're refusing to play the game he prepared. Before Ava could argue, Dante's phone vibrated once. He glanced at the encrypted screen. His expression hardened. They've leaked my location. The scarred lieutenant stepped closer. Boss, Our western routes are compromised. So are the tunnels. And Metro has already closed half the strip. Dante nodded once. As expected, Ava stared between them. You knew this would happen? I knew Victor would never waste an explosion. He wanted attention. He wanted witnesses. He wanted every camera in America pointed at this casino. A helicopter thundered overhead. News helicopters. Within minutes, every national network would be broadcasting the destruction of the Obsidian Crown. Exactly what Victor wanted. Dante looked toward Ava. From this moment forward, every person hunting me will be hunting you. Her stomach tightened. I never asked for this. I know, but you're in it now. Black SUVs pulled into the alley. Instead of entering the lead vehicle, Dante surprised everyone. No convoy. The lieutenant frowned. Boss, they'll expect armored vehicles. What do you want? Dante looked toward an aging delivery van parked beside the warehouse. That, the lieutenant blinked. The bakery truck? Exactly. 20 minutes later, the most feared mafia boss in Nevada was driving a faded white delivery van with peeling paint and a cracked windshield. Ava sat beside him wearing an oversized gray hoodie, pulled over her silver performance dress. Her glittering stage makeup had been wiped away with bottled water. Dante had exchanged his blood-stained tuxedo jacket for an old work coat found inside the warehouse, without the expensive suit, without the security detail, without the black SUVs. He looked strangely ordinary. It felt impossible. The silence inside the van stretched for several miles. Finally, Ava spoke. Do you ever stop planning? His eyes remained on the road. No, even now. Especially now. She looked out the window. Police checkpoints were appearing at nearly every major intersection. News broadcasts played on giant casino billboards. The Obsidian Crown destroyed. Mysterious explosions. Moretti missing. She sighed quietly. My entire life ended tonight. Dante answered without hesitation. No. It finally started. She turned toward him. You say things like they're facts. They usually are. She rolled her eyes despite herself. You really are. Impossible. I've been called worse. What? A poser. Monster. She looked at him carefully. You don't seem offended. I'm not. Another silence settled between them. Eventually, Ava asked the question that had been haunting her since the vault. My father. Dante already knew what she wanted. He saved me twice. You only mentioned once. The first time, he refused to kill me. The second, he disappeared. Ava frowned. I don't understand. Dante's jaw tightened. Neither do I. Samuel vanished without taking payment. He abandoned the organization. He abandoned every contract. For 15 years, no one could find him. And then suddenly, you appeared. Ava stared ahead. My adoption papers. They were real. I'm sure they were. But someone erased everything before that. She remembered childhood birthdays, camping trips, magic tricks in the backyard. Her father's quiet laugh. Had all of it been fake? Dante glanced sideways. It doesn't mean he didn't love you. She looked back at him. You sound certain. He died protecting your future. The words lingered. Long after they were spoken. The van approached another police checkpoint. Officers waved vehicles into inspection lanes. Ava's pulse quickened. They're checking everyone. They're checking for me. What do we do? Dante slowed the van, then unexpectedly reached across the center console. His fingers brushed lightly against her cheek. She froze. He carefully tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His touch lasted barely 2 seconds. Yet somehow, it felt infinitely longer. What are you doing? Looking at me. What? When they stop us, don't look nervous. You just touched my face. I know. You made me nervous. For the first time, the faintest smile appeared in Dante's eyes. Good. She stared. Was that a joke? No. I'm serious. The checkpoint officer approached the driver's window. He leaned inside. Evening. Dante nodded politely. Long night. The officer glanced toward Ava. You folks coming from the strip? Before Ava could answer, Dante reached over and gently took her hand. She nearly looked at him in shock. Instead, she remembered his warning. Look at me. She did. His thumb slowly brushed across the back of her hand. A tiny movement. Natural. Comforting. Like a husband calming an anxious wife. My fiancée doesn't like fireworks, Dante said calmly. The officer laughed. Looks like she picked the wrong night. Ava forced a nervous smile. I'd really like to go home. The officer nodded sympathetically. Understandable. He handed back Dante's borrowed driver's license. Drive safe. As the barrier lifted, Ava let out a long breath. Only after they were several blocks away did Dante release her hand. Neither of them spoke. Neither acknowledged how natural it had felt, or how reluctant they both seemed to let go. 45 minutes later, they arrived at an isolated estate, hidden in Red Rock Canyon. There were no guards visible, no cameras, no gates. Just a modest stone house overlooking miles of desert. Ava looked around. This is your safe house? No. Then whose? My mother's. She blinked. I thought, so does everyone else. He parked the van. This house officially burned down 22 years ago. It didn't. No. My mother wanted people to believe it had. Inside, the home looked untouched by time. Books lined every wall. Fresh flowers sat in crystal vases. A piano rested beside wide windows, overlooking the desert cliffs. It felt warm, peaceful, nothing like Dante. You've been here recently. Every month. Why? He looked around quietly. Because it's the only place no one ever asked me to become a monster. The sentence hit Ava harder than she expected. She walked slowly toward the piano. A framed photograph rested on top. A smiling woman, young Dante, and Ava Monroe. Her breath caught. My father. Dante nodded. They were friends. Friends. They met long before I did. Ava picked up the frame. They look happy? Yes. I've never seen my father smile like this. Neither had I. Until now. Footsteps echoed behind them. The scarred lieutenant entered, carrying a sealed evidence bag. Boss, we recovered this. Inside the transparent bag lay a single playing card. The ace of spades. Ava frowned. That's one of mine. No, Dante said quietly. It belongs to Samuel. She looked closer. Tiny handwritten symbols covered the edges. Invisible unless the light struck them just right. What does it say? Dante didn't answer immediately. Instead, he carefully removed the card, turned it over, and held it beneath the reading lamp. Letters slowly appeared inside the black ink. Samuel's handwriting. Ava instantly recognized it. The message was short. Only one sentence. Never trust the man who survives every war without losing someone he loves. Silence filled the room. Ava looked toward Dante. What does that mean? Before he could answer, the house lights suddenly went dark. Every lamp died. The security generator failed. Outside, headlights appeared across the desert. One after another, then dozens more. Black SUVs, forming a circle around the isolated house. The scarred lieutenant drew his weapon. We've been found. Dante calmly looked through the window. His expression became colder than Ava had ever seen. They didn't find us. He slowly chambered around into his pistol. They followed her. Ava's heart stopped. Someone had been tracking her, long before she ever walked onto that casino stage. The desert was silent, not peacefully silent. The kind of silence that came just before men started dying. Ava stood frozen beside the window, staring at the procession of black SUVs rolling across the sand like predators circling wounded prey. Their headlights cut through the darkness, casting long white beams across the stone house. 1, 3, 6, 10. More vehicles emerged from the ridge until nearly 20 surrounded the property from every direction. The scarred Lieutenant Marco checked the magazine in his pistol before looking at Dante. "We have less than 2 minutes." Dante didn't answer immediately. His attention remained on the headlights. "They're too organized," he finally said. Marco nodded grimly. "Military spacing. Not Victor's regular soldiers. No, they're contractors." Ava looked between them. "What's the difference?" Dante's expression never changed. "Contractors work for whoever pays the most. And tonight, they're being paid to make sure no one leaves this house alive." A heavy knot settled in Ava's stomach. The peaceful home that had felt almost comforting only minutes earlier had become another battlefield. She looked toward the old family photograph still resting on the piano. Ava Monroe, Dante's mother, a teenage Dante smiling awkwardly beside them. It suddenly occurred to her that this house wasn't simply a safe place. It was the last piece of a family that no longer existed. Dante noticed where she was looking. They chose this house on purpose, to hurt you, to erase what's left. His voice remained calm, too calm. Ava had begun to recognize that tone. Whenever Dante became quieter, the violence that followed became worse. Marco stepped toward the front entrance. "Boss, we still have the tunnel." Dante shook his head. "If they found the house, they found the tunnel." Another lieutenant hurried downstairs from the second floor. "There are thermal signatures behind the canyon." "How many?" "At least 30. Marco muttered under his breath. "They brought an army." Dante slowly removed his watch and placed it on the dining table. Then, his wedding band-free right hand rested beside it. He loosened the cuffs of his shirt, rolled the sleeves carefully to his forearms. Every movement was precise, controlled, unhurried. Ava watched him. "You already know what you're going to do." "Yes, and I'm not going to like it." "No." He walked toward a wooden cabinet built into the wall. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary bookshelf, until he pressed 3 hidden panels. The entire cabinet rotated silently. Behind it, an armory, rows of custom rifles, shotguns, handguns, protective vests, boxes of ammunition stacked from floor to ceiling. Ava stared. This was your mother's house. She believed in preparing for bad people. Marco smiled faintly. She also believed in over-preparing. Dante handed Marco a rifle, another to the second lieutenant. Then he reached for a pistol fitted with a suppressor. Before loading it, he hesitated, only for a second. Then he turned toward Ava. "Come here." She walked cautiously across the room. He placed the pistol back onto the shelf instead. Instead of a weapon, he picked up a small silver pendant hanging from a hook. It was shaped like a compass. The metal was scratched with age. "This belonged to my mother." He held it out. Ava blinked. "I can't take that." "You can. It's too important." "That's exactly why." She looked into his eyes. "If something happens to me," he said quietly, "I want someone decent to remember she existed." Ava's throat tightened. "Stop talking like that." His expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "I plan to survive." "Then keep it yourself." He stepped closer. Without asking permission, he gently fastened the pendant around her neck. His fingers brushed the back of her neck only briefly. The contact was almost nothing, yet it sent an unexpected warmth through her. When he stepped away, neither of them spoke. Marco politely looked in another direction. Outside, the first loudspeaker crackled to life. A familiar voice echoed through the canyon. "Dante. Victor Sokolov. Still hiding behind ghosts?" Dante walked toward the front window. "You're late." A chuckle echoed across the speakers. "I wanted you to have enough time to remember everyone you've lost." Ava felt Dante's shoulders tense. Victor continued. "Send the girl outside. I'll let her live." Dante answered without raising his voice. "No." "You'd sacrifice 30 men for one woman?" "No." "I'd sacrifice your entire organization." "Silence." Even Victor paused. Then laughter filled the canyon. There he is. The boy Samuel saved. You finally learned to love something. Ava looked sharply toward Dante. Victor's words landed with unmistakable purpose. Love something. Dante's jaw tightened. You're making a mistake, Victor said. She'll die exactly like your mother. The room went perfectly still. For the first time, real emotion flashed across Dante's face. Not anger, fine, gone almost instantly. But Ava saw it. She stepped toward him. Don't. He never looked away from the window. My mother wasn't supposed to be there that night. What happened? She stayed behind to save children trapped inside the house. She knew it would collapse, and she stayed anyway. Ava whispered, I'm sorry. He gave the smallest shake of his head. Don't be. She made her choice. The loudspeaker interrupted again. 1 minute, Dante. After that, we burn everything. Marco checked his rifle. They're moving. Through the windows, dark figures advanced between desert rocks. Professional, disciplined, night vision equipment. Suppressors already mounted. This wasn't intimidation. It was execution. Dante looked at Marco. Remember the northern ridge? Marco smiled. I never miss. The water tower, already wired. The canyon bridge? Ready. Ava frowned. You expected this? Dante finally looked at her. I expected betrayal. I just didn't know when. He walked toward the fireplace. Above it hung an old landscape painting. He lifted it from the wall. Behind it, a steel safe. Inside rested only 3 things. A faded photograph, an antique revolver, and a sealed envelope. Dante picked up the envelope. Samuel Monroe's handwriting covered the front. For Dante, open only if Victor finds the house. Ava's heart stopped. It's from my father. Dante nodded once. I never opened it. Why? Because Samuel told me not to. And now, he broke the wax seal. Inside, only 1 folded sheet. Dante unfolded it slowly. His eyes scanned the page. For the first time that night, his composure cracked. Barely, but enough. Ava saw disbelief. What is it? He silently handed her the letter. Her hands trembled as she read. The first line stole the air from her lungs. If you're reading this, Victor finally discovered that Ava is not the reason you're still alive. She looked up, confused. What does that mean? Dante's voice was almost a whisper. It means we've been protecting the wrong secret. Before either of them could read another line, the first sniper round shattered the living room window. Glass exploded across the floor. Marco shouted, "Contact!" Automatic gunfire erupted from every side of the house. The quiet desert disappeared beneath roaring rifles and flying stone. Dante grabbed Ava by the waist and pulled her behind the fireplace as bullets tore through the room. Wood splintered. Books burst from their shelves. The old piano exploded under rifle fire. The family photograph crashed onto the floor, its glass shattering beside them. Ava looked at it. Samuel's smiling face stared back through broken glass. Dante drew his pistol. His eyes burned with absolute certainty. They're inside the perimeter. He looked directly at Ava. Stay behind me. She opened her mouth to argue. He reached out instinctively, brushing a streak of dust from her cheek. It was such an unexpectedly gentle gesture that she forgot what she had been about to say. Then he turned toward the front hallway. The calm man disappeared. In his place stood the legend every Mafia family feared. Dante Moretti walked into the gunfire, and the war for Ava Monroe truly began. The hallway disappeared beneath smoke. Bullets ripped through plaster, shattered antique mirrors, and tore splinters from the old oak staircase. The quiet home Dante's mother had protected for decades had become a battlefield in less than 10 seconds. Dante moved through it with terrifying precision. He never rushed. He never fired twice at the same target. Every movement was deliberate, controlled, almost silent. Ava remained behind the stone fireplace, exactly where he had left her. Every instinct told her to run after him, but she knew she would only become another target. Marco slid across the hardwood floor beside her, reloading with practiced speed. Stay low. Dante's alone. He prefers it that way. Ava shook her head. He's outnumbered. Marco gave a grim smile. So are they. A thunderous explosion shook the western side of the property. The windows burst outward. Outside, one of the black SUVs erupted into flames as the hidden explosives beneath the old water tower detonated. Burning debris rained across the desert, briefly illuminating masked gunmen scrambling for cover. Marco looked toward the fire. That's one trap. One? There are more. Ava stared at him. You two planned for this. We planned for the day someone found this house. Another burst of automatic fire answered him. Dante appeared at the end of the hallway, blood streaking one sleeve, but his expression unchanged. Move, he ordered. Marco immediately stood. The cellar? Dante nodded. They're forcing us underground. No, Dante replied. We're choosing the ground they don't understand. He reached Ava in 3 long strides. Can you run? She looked at the blood soaking through his shirt. Can you? I asked first. I'm fine. He studied her face for a second, searching for panic. Instead, he found determination. Without another word, he took her hand, not because she couldn't keep up, because he refused to lose her in the smoke. Together, they descended a narrow stone staircase hidden beneath the kitchen floor. The cellar was far larger than Ava expected. Shelves of preserved food lined one wall, but beyond them stretched an underground corridor reinforced with concrete and steel. Maps covered another wall. Photographs, old surveillance image, names connected by red strings. A war room. Her eyes stopped on one photograph. It was hers. She stepped closer. Another. Then another. Dozens of them. Some showed her leaving magic rehearsals. Others captured her walking through grocery stores, airports, bookstores, even sitting alone in a coffee shop. They stretched back years. 5, 7, almost 10. Her heartbeat stumbled. She turned slowly toward Dante. What is this? Silence. Marco quietly looked away. Ava's voice became sharper. Dante, he finally answered. I had you watched. For 10 years? Yes. You've been spying on me? I've been protecting you. Her disbelief turned into anger. I never asked you to. No. You don't get to decide my life. I know. No, you don't. She walked toward the wall and ripped down one of the photographs. You watched me. You followed me. You knew where I lived. You knew everything. I knew enough to keep you alive. She threw the photograph onto the floor. You sound exactly like every controlling man who thinks fear is love. For the first time since they met, Dante flinched, not physically, emotionally. The words landed harder than any bullet. I never wanted your gratitude, he said quietly. I wanted your future. Ava folded her arms. Then tell me why. He looked at the photographs. When Samuel disappeared, he came to me. He made me promise that if anything ever happened to him, I'd make sure no one ever reached you. Ava felt the anger inside her hesitate. He knew someone would come after me. He knew Victor never forgets. Unfinished business. She swallowed. So every time something strange happened. The apartment fire. The man who disappeared after following me. The car accident that never happened. Dante nodded once. My people. She closed her eyes. Every unexplained moment from the past decade suddenly fit together. She had believed she was lucky. She hadn't been lucky. She had been guarded. Always. Without knowing. Without choosing. A distant explosion shook dust from the ceiling. Marco looked toward the security monitor, mounted above the map table. They're inside the house. Another lieutenant's voice crackled over the radio. North corridor breached. Dante stepped toward the monitor. Hold them for 60 seconds. We're already losing men. I know. The transmission ended. Ava watched him carefully. You knew this could happen. I knew protecting you would cost lives. And you still chose it. Yes. The answer came without hesitation. She searched his face for regret. There wasn't any. Only certainty. Another radio call. Interrupted. Boss. Marco answered this one. What? The voice on the other end trembled. They found Mrs. Moretti's garden. Dante froze. Only for a heartbeat. Then he closed his eyes. My mother's roses. They burned everything. The room became impossibly quiet. Ava saw it then. Not rage. Grief. The carefully hidden grief of a man who had spent years convincing the world nothing could hurt him. She stepped closer before thinking. Her hand rested gently against his forearm. He looked down at it. Neither spoke. For a brief second, the war outside disappeared. You don't have to carry everything alone, she whispered. Dante held her gaze. I've never carried it with anyone. The confession escaped him so softly it almost sounded accidental. A sharp alarm suddenly echoed through the cellar. Red warning lights began flashing overhead. Marco cursed. They've reached the foundation. Dante immediately returned to himself. They found the lower entrance. How long? 2 minutes. He opened another steel locker. Inside rested only one object, a weathered leather folder sealed with Samuel Monroe's personal insignia. Ava frowned. Another message? No. He handed it to her. This is what Victor actually wants. She hesitated. What is it? I've never opened it. You? I gave Samuel my word. You trusted him that much? Dante met her eyes. I trusted him with my life. Ava slowly accepted the folder. Its edges were worn smooth from age. Before she could break the seal, the lights flickered violently. A deep, metallic boom echoed through the underground corridor. The reinforced blast door at the far end shuddered. Once, twice, then a third time. Each impact louder than the last. Marco raised his rifle. They're bringing explosives. Dante stepped in front of Ava. Again, without conscious thought. She noticed. So did he. Neither mentioned it. Another explosion rocked the corridor. Concrete cracked overhead. Dust poured from the ceiling. Then, a distorted voice echoed through hidden speakers installed somewhere inside the cellar. Victor, you've always disappointed me, Dante. A pause. But tonight, you finally brought me exactly what I came for. Ava instinctively tightened her grip on Samuel's sealed folder. Victor Laufel, you still think that's the secret? Dante's eyes narrowed. What do you want? Silence. Then Victor answered with chilling satisfaction. I don't want the folder. I want the woman holding it. The blast door buckled inward. Steel screamed against steel. A narrow gap appeared. Shadowy figures began forcing their way through. Dante drew a slow breath. His voice remained calm. Marco. Yes, boss? If they reach this room. Marco nodded before Dante finished. They won't. Dante looked back at Ava one final time. If anything happens, she cut him off. No. Ava. We walk out together. For the first time that night, a faint, genuine smile touched his face. Small, tired, real. Then it disappeared as the blast door exploded inward, and the first masked gunman stepped through the smoke. As dawn slowly rose over the Nevada desert, the war was far from over. Some secrets were worth killing for, some promises were worth dying for, and some love stories could only begin after everything else had been burned to the ground. But now there's one question only you can answer. If you were Ava, would you trust the man who secretly protected you for 10 years without ever telling you the truth? Or would you walk away forever? Share your answer in the comments below. I read every one of them. And if you enjoy cinematic Mafia Boss romances filled with dangerous obsession, unforgettable twists, and love stories born in the middle of war, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because the next story might be even darker and even more impossible to escape.